So right from the beginning, I hope you don't drop your food into your lap. I'm just going to invite everybody to close their eyes for a moment. Oh yeah, and then with your eyes closed, I'm just going to invite you to point to yourself. Hopefully no cheating, so just close your eyes and point to yourself. Beautiful. I do this with my teen retreats. And now you can just keep your finger where it is and open your eyes. And so I find it's really interesting that most people don't point to their mouth. I am who I say I am. You know, I say I'm the mom, I say I'm the boss, I say I'm this or that. Occasionally someone will point to their head. I am who I think I am, which is interesting. I think I'm not very good at math. I think I'm a good writer. I think I have a hot temper. I think I need to lose 5 pounds or whatever. But we all instinctively know to point to our heart. Jesus says, pray from the heart. All kinds of spiritual practices say live and speak and act from the heart. And so we all seem to know that this is our true self in our heart and not so much here. So I really believe that writing and journaling and poetry writing and some of the things that I've discovered are really a way of expressing the heart. I'm going to tell a quick little story, and then I'm going to just quote some other great masters about writing from the heart and how that is a spiritual practice. I knew a fellow in university. I went here to St. Mike's, and his name was John Moore. Maybe somebody here knows him. And he was really quite a lovely writer and a poet, but he had a stammer and a stutter, so that when I'd speak with him, he would take a long time to explain what he wanted to say. And so I learned patience in listening to him. And one time he asked me and my friend Mary if we'd come to his poetry reading. And I thought, oh boy, I wonder if the people at the poetry reading are going to be as patient as his friends are, you know, because it'll take him a long time to get through the poems. So we went, and I said a little prayer hoping that it would be a forgiving and open audience, which of course it would be, I think, if they came to a poetry reading. But what was fascinating to me is he introduced himself and took quite a time to tell about his name and that he was going to read some poems. And then he read his poems as fluently and smoothly as I'm speaking to you. And at the very end of reading his poems, he said, thank you. And I thought, wow, that to me spoke a great deal about how poetry is the language of the heart, that he wrote from the heart, and although it might have been a brain thing that had him stammer or stutter, when he spilled out his poetry, he was as fluent as a bird flying. And I just found that fascinating, and I never forgot. So I'm just going to read a few quotes, because I believe whether it's journaling or writing letters or epistles or jotting down notes or clipping little sayings that are interesting, I think the whole idea of language being of the heart and channeling out of our hearts and through our blood and through the pen and onto paper, there's some amazingly therapeutic and spiritual aspects of writing and about getting things out of our heart onto paper. Madeline Longo, who wrote The Wind in the Door, says that writing is channeling of the heart. Literally letting it flow out onto paper. John B. Lee, a Canadian poet, says that writing is prayer. Mary Oliver, one of my favorite American poets, says, it's not what the words say, but how they make you feel. T.S. Eliot talks about at the center of the dance is the still point, and he spoke once to Ezra Pound about writing helping him to find that still point. And I certainly find that no matter how I might speak out loud or go for a walk in nature or try and work out my troubles or make a decision, there's something about pouring things out onto paper that helps with discernment, and that's stilling, you know, grounding the floating mind, as the Buddhists say. Robin Blazer, who was the 2008 Griffin Poetry Prize winner, said, language is love. It's the only way to enter the heart of our lives is through language. Madeline Longo again says, art as prayer, writing lets us know wholeness. Annie Lamott says, you write, oh, I have to swear here, sorry. You write through the shit. You channel out onto paper everything, let it spill out, And then the gift of a soul treasure is always there if you weed through the writing through the shit. Anne Simpson, who's another Canadian poet, says writing holds a mirror up to our true self. It holds a mirror up to the soul. Mary Oliver says that daily writing or journaling, or as Julia Cameron calls it, morning pages. She's wrote a beautiful book of 12 steps, The Artist's Way, and she really recommends morning pages where you just make that commitment to write a little bit every day, every morning in her mind, because she says if Romeo was waiting and Juliet never showed up, there wouldn't be a love affair. So if we don't show up with our pen to our paper, we don't get to have that love affair. And so it shows commitment to the heart to pick up our journal, our pen, our paper. Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, which I would strongly recommend. It's like a 12-step program for anybody. We're all artists. That's our life, our gift from God is to be artists. And we all have that artist within, wanting to gain expression. So some of her creative affirmations are, I'm a channel of God's creativity. As I create and listen, I'll be led from within. My creativity heals myself and others. My creativity always leads me to truth. God creates through me. And my favorite is, creativity is God's gift to us, and using this creativity is our gift to God. But I'm just going to touch for a moment, because there'll be more discussion about this, about the types of writing that I've encountered. Where I work at Scarborough Missions, there's a beautiful nun that has a workshop called Zen and the Pen, where you do meditating and then you spill out. She also goes into the prisons and has the inmates there do therapeutic writing, which is amazing, and it's called Freeing the Soul with Writing. I even think of my 15-year-old son who's struggling, who whenever he wants a new piece of technology will present to me, Mom, this is a pro and con list. Here's all the pros, here's all the cons, and here's my second list. Here's why you might imagine I don't need this game, and here's why I'd like it. So I think, wow, you know, he's processing all of that in not only a way for himself, but in a way to present to me. When I used to teach drama at Immaculata High School in Ottawa, we had the students do role-playing, and so when a student would act the role of Anne Frank and then write in role in the person of Anne Frank, not only did that student actor or actress, that student actress, find insights into Anne Frank, but found insights into herself by writing in the role of Anne Frank, or writing in the role of imaginary Jack Spruce, trying to survive in the wilderness, or any number of roles that they created for themselves. I worked as well with the Children's Peace Theater, and we did stuff called Poetry in Motion, where the kids would just jot down verbs of how they're feeling right now. And they say things like uptight, which isn't really a verb, but we just let them have it anyway. And then they'd create a verb chain, and they'd move their bodies in the way the words they made. And already that would become interesting poetry in motion. And then having gotten their bodies to move that way, again, we'd give a pen and paper and let them channel it out. So there's lots of other examples. Maybe we'll talk at the question and period. But what I thought I would just do is give a few insights. Sometimes I have an inspiration and I pick up a pen and I think, oh, I really want to write about that. But I'd say more often than not, I just write through the shit. There's something inside me, and I write and spill and write and spill, and often the poem speaks to me, and there's an epiphany at the end. I had no idea, even if I think I set out to write a poem about my teenage son, you know, whatever, into technology, I find at the end there's a whole new poem that's written itself if I let myself totally surrender to that spirit, that heart of me writing. All right, so I'll start with my first poem. There's sort of chapters in my life. My husband and I took our firstborn daughter to an overseas placement, a VIX placement in St. Lucia, much to the disappointment of the grandparents. This was their first grandchild. And so there was a lot of speaking about, gee, that's a little selfish of you to go to a third world country with our firstborn granddaughter. But we went because we felt really filled by the Spirit to go. And it's one of those things you just follow the Spirit, even though in your mind you can't explain it, but in your heart. So our daughter was a year old, and just near Christmas, she got dengue fever, which is very, very dangerous, and most children probably don't survive dengue fever. But we had this dark night of the soul where we thought, oh, everyone was right. We made a terrible decision to bring our daughter overseas. They were right, and the doctor on Christmas Eve actually came, and we were saying to each other, well, if his medicine doesn't work, we're going to fly home. And I just remember that moment where he said, you're not going to go anywhere, sister. There's no more flying home to Canada. She's going to make it or not tonight. And so we held her through the night, and she was limp, and she had a fever of 106. I didn't even know thermometers went up that high. But I had an insight in that moment that I had to write down because I wanted to remember it. And I thought maybe someone will read the book and have an insight about all the other sisters in the world who are holding their children at the moment of death. So it's called Eighth Day. For 7 days, she is limp as rags and sweat damp. Our firstborn child, the color of a frog's throat. My own petit piton is burning with dengue fever, and it's too late to go home now. The kindly doctor already raced up our winding banana road to bring the last penicillin that didn't work. No more that medicine can do, sister. And sweet Ivy, cross her arms over her wide lap and shake her head for our poor daughter. She, we, us, all setting our prayer vigil, and it too late to go home. The fever never breaks, and I start thinking of other mothers, sisters on their dirt floors, who lost their babies having loved them just as fierce. Too late. After this blur of close heat and worry, cocks crowing through the night, hot sponges gone tepid with tears, she is cool as a fish belly at Oyston's, and we wake to Hillary and Charlie bringing us black bananas. So she made it through the dengue fever, but I remember having a vision of all the other mothers in the world and feeling quite comforted in that moment, knowing some other mothers were going to have to say goodbye to their child, whether it was an adult dying of AIDS. And so I thought I want to write that down. And that was one of those poems that came directly from an experience. I had the experience, I had the vision, and I think I want to write this down. And praise God that she's alive, and praise God through writing. And so for me, that was writing as prayer.